So tonight, we're going to talk about faith and money. Sometimes oil and water, maybe. Sometimes they go together, but not so often. So to have a little bit of fun at the end, we're going to have a contest. One part of the contest is going to be a question around your faith. The prize there will be a blessed rosary from the Vatican. And we're going to have a financial question. First prize there is a $100 bill. All right? So if anybody leaves, you're out. I'm just saying. This is one way to keep the crowd here, just so you know. All right. So let me start with a question. What do you think about as it relates to yourself and money? What does money mean to you? What does it mean to your parents? Do you think differently about money than your parents? How about maybe a show of hands? How many think you do if you think about money differently than your parents? I agree. I do. I do think you think differently. Let me ask you another question. Do you think rationally about money? Do your parents think rationally about money? I got one. You don't. Trust me. Your kids won't. You don't. Your parents didn't. Human beings do not think rationally about money. We just don't. Let me give a quick example, a couple of them. I'm going to pull out a quarter. I'm going to flip it. If it's a head, you're going to give me $1,000. If it's a tail, I'm going to give you $1,500. Who would like to take it? I got one. All right. How about 2,000 to 1,000? Show of hands. 2,500 to 1,000. There we go. Now we got some hands coming up. You're a normal crowd. This is what the academics call one of the many heuristics, which comes from behavioral finance, which is called loss aversion. A 10% gain to all of you is like 1 unit of happiness. But a 10% loss, that's 2.5 units of unhappiness. It's not proportional. And you don't behave proportionally. I can't tell you how many times when clients come in, they say, you know what, we're not going to sell that stock till we get back to even. Oh, okay, fine, good. Good luck with that one. Let me give you another one. Now look at the people around you. Look at the people up and down your road and across the aisle. Amongst us in here, by a show of hands, how many of you are above average drivers? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. No, you're not. But see, that's human beings. That's called another one. That's called overconfidence. It works awesome for us in so many ways of life. How many of you would have gone to college, get married, have a business, start a family if you knew what you're up against? You don't. You're confident, and so you go. That's fabulous for society. Not so good for finance, though. Let me give you a specific example. Terrence O'Dean at the University of California did a study. Got 10 years worth of data, and it was broken down by male and female. Males typically are more confident when it comes to finance than females. Whether that's justified or not is another story, but they are. So they trade more often than females. So over that 10 years, who do you think did better, males or females? Females. Yeah, females. That's exactly right, because they didn't trade as often and they did better. They took another cut at the data and they broke it down by married males and single males. Married males had the influence of a wife. The single ones didn't. So who do you think did better? Yeah, the married guys. Exactly. So these are what are called heuristics. So there's a field of study called behavioral finance. In Chicago, Richard Thaler last fall got his Nobel Prize in behavioral finance. About 15 years ago, myself and a group of other folks worked with him on a couple of projects. I've always found this stuff fascinating. So there's a whole bunch of these. There's mental accounting, there's loss aversion, there's hindsight bias, there's lots of them. That's essentially what I do in my day job, is essentially help people from making mistakes around finance. So for me, our firm has about 60 team members now. Work with roughly 1,000 families, and we manage about $4 billion for those families. Now, when I was your age, what did money mean to me? I got out of school, I was broke, didn't have a car, and had school debt. So money was like, wow, I really need some of that. More was always better, right? But think about our faith. What does our faith say? So the gospel reading a week ago yesterday was, it's easier for a camel to get through an eye of a needle than for a rich person to get to heaven. Or as Pope Francis said not too long ago, the devil enters through the wallet. Those are pretty sobering things. But when I was in my 20s, I was like, yeah, that's a problem for somebody else, but it's not my problem. I don't have a lot of money to worry about, thanks very much. But I was in the pursuit of money, right? And all of you are too. And all of you are professional here. Most, if not all of you, at some point in your life are going to have more money than you need. But even now, in the pursuit of money, how do you approach that? How do you strike a balance? At my first job, one of the guys, was a young guy my age, he liked to go out, spent all his money, go to lunch one day. He's looking real unsettled. I said, Scott, what's wrong? He says, yeah. He says, you know what? My auto insurance is due, $600. I didn't have it. So I did a drug deal last night, and everybody in the room had a gun except me. So that's not the way to go, right? To get things going when you're pursuing money. Now let me give you another one. This is for someone who's now done very well. So probably in his late 40s, his name's John, client of mine, sold his business, did really well after taxes and everything, netted about $13 million. So he's been a client for, let's say, 6-8 months, comes in, he starts telling me about some of the toys he got, which is great. But then he leans in and he says this, you know, I fought all of these 20-some years to get to the top of the mountain. I get here, I ruined my health, my marriage ended, and I stopped practicing my faith. And I get to the top and I look here and I'm thinking, this is it? This is what I struggled for? I feel hollow inside. So money can be a challenge, right? But money can be a blessing too. What could the church do in this world if it didn't have money for orphans and single moms and disabled children and so forth? The church needs money. You can do a lot of good things with money. Think about the gospel reading with the Good Samaritan. Would he have made the Gospels if he didn't have money to leave the guy with the innkeeper and pay him and pick him up on the way back if he needed more? I'm not sure he'd have made the Gospel. So money does good things, but you have to strike a balance. So I'm going to go through 3 things that I think have certainly helped me strike that balance in life. But before I do that, I want to just give you about 3 or 4 minutes of my faith journey. So I grew up Catholic, went to church, great. Kind of normal, I'd say a cradle Catholic. 35 years old, I go home on vacation. Married, got 2 young boys, and we're going to go out that day, we're on vacation, but my family's taking forever to get ready, so I'm bored. So I'm sitting in my parents' living room, and there's a book on the second shelf of the end table on Marian miracles. Well, we got time to kill, start reading that. It pretty much changed the trajectory of my life. So I read an enormous amount the next 6 months, and I decided I had to go to Medjugorje. I had never heard of Medjugorje until I read this book. I told my wife, and mind you, this is 1994. The war is still going on. So I told my wife, I said, I think I want to go to Medjugorje. She says, no, you don't. I said, no, I really do. A couple weeks later, no, that would be a bad idea. She told me later on, she went to talk to her spiritual director, fully expecting him to side with her, saying, no, he should stay home with the 2 young kids. And he said, if he's saying that, you should let him go. So I went. That 1 week changed the trajectory of my life. I'm going to give you a quick visual. I assume most of you in here have gone to an iPic theater. You lean back, your entire field of vision is covered by that screen, right? So when I'm going through life up until that point, every little thing in my life, sports, my family, work, everything is covered in the whole screen. I come back. Everything on that screen is pushed off to the horizon. 80% of the screen is white. And in the middle of that white part of the screen is my faith. That's what happened to me there. So I come back, and all of a sudden things got real simple. Here's my priorities in life: my faith, my family, my health, and work. And anytime I've moved away from that, I've paid for it. But it's so hard in our culture, right? You go to the office, you go to your place of business. Is that the order that you're encouraged to adopt? I don't think so. Work's at the top. If you have to exercise, do it on your own time. Your family, good luck. And faith, don't bring that in here, please. That's tough. So every day, what are you doing to strike that balance? So I'm going to give you 3 things. The first is understand more about your faith, your Catholic faith, your Christian faith. Number 2, the importance of prayer. And number 3, love. So I'll start with prayer. When I was in Medjugorje, there was a book that was introduced to me, written, it's a diary by Sister Faustina, Divine Mercy. How many of you in here are familiar with that? Most of you. Yeah, most of you. I had never heard of it. So I read the book, and that was also another big game changer for me. So I'm going to go through a quote on a couple of things about our Catholic faith that the Lord gave Sister Faustina. For those of you that didn't raise your hand, this is a Catholic nun who died at the age of 33 right before World War II started. She was in Krakow, Poland. And Christ visited her from the time she was little and told her to write a diary. So the first one, in terms of better understanding your faith, is the Eucharist. There's no form of higher prayer on this planet than the Mass. And the summit of the Mass is the Eucharist. So here's what Christ tells Sister Faustina in the diary. This is entry 1385. When I come to a human heart in Holy Communion, my hands are full of all kinds of graces, which I want to give to the soul, but souls do not even pay attention to me. They leave me to myself and busy themselves with other things. They treat me as a dead object. Later in the book, Sister Faustina says, if angels were capable of envy, they're not, but if they were, they'd be envious for human beings for two things. The first one is our ability to receive Holy Communion. I encourage you to look into the Eucharistic miracles there's so many books written about that. All these things about the Eucharist. Learn more about it. It's the culmination of our faith. The second is confession. Right? When I was growing up, I'd rather have a nail driven through my foot than go to confession. Anyway, oh my God, I have to go there and do what? I have to tell you, I've come to appreciate in life how special, how unique confession is. It's such a gift. The other Christian faiths don't have confession, and I can give you a quick story. I read a book not too long ago about a priest in World War II who dealt with concentration camps. He said, one of the biggest problems that the other Christian faiths had in dealing with their soldiers and all of the trauma was they didn't have confession. So that, I think, says a lot. The third is saints. For me, the power of listening to the saints is so important. Over the last 25 years since I've gotten back from Medjugorje, I literally have always got a book that I'm reading about a saint. Padre Pio, St. Gemma, St. John Vianney. The list goes on and on and on. I've read 3 times Sister Faustina's book in the last 25 years. For me, if I don't put something in the top every day, it's leaking out the back. Because the culture's constantly coming at me with messages that don't line up with the priorities I shared with you a moment ago. So if I don't read, if I don't pray, which I'm going to talk about next, if I don't go to Mass, right, I get overwhelmed and I slide away. So I encourage you to learn more about your faith. It's such a rich, rich faith. You know, as cradle Catholics, we many times just go to Mass and when we go home. Look at your faith. It's very, very encouraging and motivating. The second one is prayer. So Pope John Paul II said, prayer joined to sacrifice constitutes the most powerful force in human history. Hey, you know what? I screwed up. I want to read you the quote about confession from Sister Faustina. It's right here. Apologize. Let me back up. Rewind the wheel. All right, here we go. So confession. Entry 1602. Here's what Jesus said to Faustina about confession. Daughter, every time you go to confession, immerse yourself entirely in my mercy with great trust, so that I might pour the bounty of my grace upon your soul. When you approach the confessional, know this. I myself am waiting there for you. I am only hidden by the priest, but I myself act in your soul. Here the misery of the soul meets the God of mercy. Tell souls that from the fountain of my mercy, souls draw graces solely with a vessel of trust. Trust is really important here. Their trust is great. If their trust is great, there's no limit to my generosity. The torrents of grace inundate humble souls. How many of you are familiar with the Catholic business writer, consultant, Patrick Lencioni? A couple of us, okay. So Patrick Lencioni is a fabulous business consultant. He's written a number of books, 5 Dysfunctions of Team, Death by a Meeting, Ideal Team Player, and these things have also sold millions of copies. He had a conference, I think it was here in Denver about a month ago. They sold out at 800 people. It was at Dallas? Dallas, thank you, okay. 800 people came to his outing. Anyways, he talks about being humble, which is the tie-in right here, hungry and smart. How do you get ahead in the business world? To be humble, hungry, and smart. Smart isn't academic intelligence, it's emotional intelligence in this example. But he starts with humility is the most important. Think about it in your own career. Do you like working with people that are humble? We like to work with people that are boastful. Our culture tells us that if you don't stand up for yourself, if you're not forceful, if you're not in someone's face, you're letting someone walk over you. I would encourage you to think about it differently. I think humility is the start of all of that. The humility is what draws you to other team players, and the humility is what's going to help you in your career, more so than the other. Let's go back to regularly scheduled planning now. All right, prayer. So I told you about John Paul II. So for me, the most important prayer after the Mass, for me, is the Rosary. In Medjugorje, all you do is say the Rosary. And I came to appreciate how beautiful, how simple, and how powerful the Rosary is. I've got a sheet up here with the 15 promises of the Rosary. For those of you that like to see it, it's an awesome list. I'll give you a few quotes here, though. First is Pope Pius IX. I could conquer the world if I had an army to say the Rosary. Padre Pio. The Rosary, that's my weapon. John Paul II. The Rosary, that's my favorite prayer. When I went and I Googled quotes about the Rosary, it didn't end. It just kept going. So I'm going to stop there. But there's so many people who have been influenced by the Rosary. Last January, my wife and I went to the Legatus meeting in Florida. And one of the presenters there was Father Don Callaway. Anyone here familiar with Father Callaway? A couple, Jen? Yeah, a couple. Most of you have not. So let me just give you the 90-second background. He spoke for an hour about his background. So this might start to paint the picture. He grew up with no faith. His dad was in the military. He got in so much trouble in Japan that he came back to the United States in handcuffs as a teenager. You starting to get the picture? He went through the legal system, a couple of bumps and bruises, left, and started traveling year-round with the Grateful Dead. And he was high 3 years in a row. He said, I never was not high. He got in trouble with the law, was on the run again, and he goes back to his parents' house to find refuge before he decides where else he's going to go. In a series of very big events in a small amount of time, he literally became Catholic and a Catholic priest. I encourage you to go on YouTube. He's got some awesome videos about his history and about his background and so forth. Unbelievably great speaker, really funny guy. He wrote a book, 450-page book called Champions of the Rosary. So I just read it this past summer. So think about it, it's 450 pages about the Rosary. How is that even possible? He goes through the history with St. Dominic, all the way through the ages, all the different battles, all the different people that were converted by the Rosary, etc., etc. I'm going to give you just a couple. So how many of you in here have heard of, let me get his picture out here. Bartolo Longo. Oh, we got one in the back. Bingo. Just a couple. I'd never heard of him either. Congratulations. Well done. So Bartolo here was born in 1871 in Italy, went to college, and lost his faith. Not too unusual at that point, right? Went to law school, but not only did he lose his faith, he became vehemently anti-Catholic. Hated the practices of the faith, couldn't stand the Pope, so he became a Satanist. He was so good at it, he became a satanic priest. This is all in the late 1800s in Italy. He started having hallucinations, nightmares, depression. A lot of bad things were happening. So he sought out a Dominican priest. Remember, St. Dominic found the Rosary, the Blessed Mother. And he helped him come back to the faith. Not only did he come back to the faith, but he literally turned his life around. And he went to Pompeii, Italy. He helped build a shrine there. He wrote a book about the Rosary. He did a newsletter about the Rosary. He built a shrine around the Rosary. He devoted his life to the Rosary. And in 1980, John Paul II beatified Bartolo. All of that because of the Rosary. So you think about Father Callaway, the Rosary, Bartolo, the Rosary, just two examples of many. So in terms of prayer, I'm biased, but I think the Rosaries should be part of anyone's prayer regime. Finally, love. Love's an interesting one. So this about a month ago, my wife went to this year's Legatus meeting, and Father Larry Richards was speaking, and he talked about St. John Vianney. St. John Vianney said, you only need two things to get to heaven: prayer and love. Love's a tough one, though. So think about at work. You get passed over for a job. Someone talks behind your back. Someone steals your idea. Someone got the promotion you didn't get. Is it easy to love that person? It's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard. But as Father Richard said, you can't get to heaven if you don't love. You have to love if you want to get to heaven. So just a quick personal story. So when I came back from Medjugorje, and 3 years later, I was working in an accounting firm at the time, and unbeknownst to the rest of the partners in the accounting firm, one of the partners had been stealing. He had been doing it for 4 or 5 years from clients, 6 clients specifically, 6 doctors. He would go with these doctors, and they would buy a building, an office building or an apartment complex, and he would have 5 50% partners. Do the math. That doesn't work out so good, folks, right? In other words, he's telling, yeah, you're a 50% partner, you're a 50% partner, you're a 50% partner. You can't do that. So he was taking their money. So the net result was everybody, including me, got sued. So there was 2 years of depositions, attorney's fees, the uncertainty with settlements, all of that. If I had gone to Medjugorje 3 years earlier and had the ability to be grounded in my faith, saying the Rosary, understanding how important love is and forgiveness, right? So out of love comes forgiveness and mercy, which is essentially what God gives us. Without that, I'm not sure how I would have made that transition, or how I would have fought that battle. It was literally life-changing for me to give me the tools to fight through something that could have made me bitter, vengeful, and the rest of it, right? All of you've got your own stories, in your own companies, your own businesses that you work, where you work, where people haven't treated you right. How do you treat them? How do you apply love in that part of your life as well? So let me wrap up here before we go to our little contest, do some Q&A too. 5 or 6 years ago, my wife and I went to Rome with Cardinal George. Cardinal George was a cardinal in Chicago for 17 years. Brilliant man. So we were in Rome, and we were at dinner one night. We were talking, he was answering questions, and he had a saying, which I'm going to leave with you now. I'll let this be my final thought for you. When it came to money, he said, when it's all done, and it's time for you to go, leave the planet, the money that you've earned and spent is gone. The money that you saved is left behind, and the money you gave away goes with you. Yeah, that's pretty powerful, right?